I'm going to first talk about, as a way to set the stage, in general, what does innovation mean? What does disruption mean? Then I'm going to talk about foundational technologies and specifically talk about one foundational technology, which is artificial intelligence or machine learning, and how technology companies in Silicon Valley has evolved from being technology companies to today being any company. And that, I believe, is a threat to any and everybody's business everywhere in the world. The last part, which is where I want to spend most of my time, I'd like to talk about, well, if you're an incumbent company and technology is no longer an enabler, it's actually a threat, what can you do about it? And then Ron will speak a little bit about, from the perspective of Sysco, which is a traditional company that is the industry leader, a $55 billion company in the food services industry, how we are going through our own transformation with technology at its core.
Hello everyone. While you guys are chowing away, I think it's good that we start proceedings. Just want to welcome all of you to this fantastic event. Really a discussion titled Evolution of Silicon Valley Tech Companies and How It Impacts You. Want to thank Mani and Ron for coming and giving this presentation. Just a brief intro on Mani. Mani, hailing from Trinity College, Kandy, went to the US, worked for Yahoo, and then really started, I think it's a real success story for Sri Lankan companies. Started as a software service provider, and then evolved into becoming a product company, which was later sold to Sysco, and now currently the founder of Sysco Labs. Mani is recognized globally as a tech entrepreneur, and his insights from Silicon Valley will be great value to us. Ron May from Sysco. I was amazed to hear that Ron heads the e-commerce platform for Sysco, which generates over $5 billion in revenue, which is mind-boggling. So that's the insights that Ron and Mani will provide would be greatly beneficial for us. Also want to welcome Chitrangani Mubarak, ICTA chairman, for accepting our invitation to attend this event. Ruindu Piris, chairman of SLASCOM, for attending this event, and Duminda Singha, Director General for BOI, for gracing this occasion as well. Greatly appreciate your support on this. With that, I think the format of today's presentation is Mani and Ron will give a brief presentation, followed by a Q&A session moderated by Shanil. So to give more justice to the bios of Mani and Ron, I invite Shanil to take co-proceedings. Thanks.
So while you guys are eating, you'll also know that software IT is eating the world, right? So there is a significant transformation going on right now across the world, right? Software really is eating the world. And this transformation is actually led in the Silicon Valley. So last year alone, $50 billion of investment went into tech companies only in the Silicon Valley, right? Just think about that for a second, because that's huge. Just imagine the amount of innovation and R&D that can happen with $50 billion, right? Just to put it into perspective, Sri Lanka's GDP is about $80 billion. So amazing amount of transformation that's going on right in the valley, right? And the teams in the valley are leading this. So we have two very important speakers today. As Kumudu mentioned, Mani Kulasurya is a serial entrepreneur. He's actually based out of the Valley. Product of Trinity College. He and I always argue about which is the better college, Royal or Trinity, and I always win. And then he went on to study in the US, where he did his degree at Tulane and MBA from Vanderbilt University. His early career, all related to innovation, was at Citibank in New York, where I believe he led the eCity group. And then after that, Yahoo, early team member at Yahoo in San Francisco. So he founded Sysco Labs, which we were known as Cake before, and was instrumental in getting the venture capital money, as well as getting eventually Sysco to buy the entire company out. Being in the Valley, Mani is highly connected with the latest innovations, with the people from Google to Facebook to WhatsApp, and he has currently invested in over 20 tech companies. So today he's going to talk about a lot about how software is really eating the world, and what traditional companies have to work to and really work like a tech company to succeed in the new era. Ron comes from an enterprise background and have worked in pretty large companies. He is the head of e-commerce at Sysco, which is a multi-billion-dollar business. And prior to this, he was working at a very senior position at Salesforce.com. You can imagine Sysco is a $50 billion company, and the e-commerce platform is today significant in being multi-billion, but also going to be much more significant into the future, right? Not only in terms of revenue, but in terms of a very important aspect of what we call customer experience, which plays a big role in the future client. So he's going to talk about, after Mani, about how important a differentiated customer experience, especially in the digital world, to be competitive and to lead a market. He will also talk about some of the challenges big companies face in adapting to this transformation. So very interesting set of presentations to look forward to. And as Kumul mentioned, we'd like to keep this as collaborative as possible. Straight afterwards, we'll open it up for questions, discussions, and whatnot. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to take you through three different parts during this presentation, and I'm going to move fairly quickly. But keep in mind that this is meant to be a discussion. This is meant to be informal. So hold your questions, and I'll clarify things towards the end, because I'm going to try to cover quite a bunch of things. Before we get started, I just want to say something. Last weekend, just before coming to Sri Lanka, I was on the Facebook campus. I was there to meet with a friend of mine. And I was sitting in the front lobby waiting for him to show up, and I noticed two things. The first was there's a big sign on the wall on the entrance that says, "Move fast and break things." And I remember this. I think this is something that Mark Zuckerberg said in the early days of Facebook. But what it really means is, if you're not breaking things, you're not moving fast enough. So, but what was even more intriguing is that as I walked in, on the glass into each of the conference rooms in the front of the building, the logo that's etched on the glass is Sun Microsystems. Now this is the Facebook campus. Yes, they took over from what used to be the old Sun Microsystem campus. Does anybody here remember Sun Microsystems? At one point, these guys were a preeminent technology company. They no longer exist. Right? They used to build these high-end workstations. And when I was having lunch with my friend, I said, "Hey, don't you guys have enough money to change the logos?" And he said, "No, Mark wants those logos to be there because he wants to make a point that you may be the biggest guy in your industry today, but unless you're continuously evolving, continuously innovating, continuously disrupting, somebody else is going to do that to you." And therefore, the logos are there. So I thought that was pretty impressive. And Facebook, as you know, is a company that has gone. It's a young company that has gone through amazing growth. So keep that in mind as we go through this. I'm going to first talk about, as a way to set the stage, in general, what does innovation mean? What does disruption mean? Then I'm going to talk about foundational technologies and specifically talk about one foundational technology, which is artificial intelligence or machine learning, and how technology companies in Silicon Valley has evolved from being technology companies to today being any company. And that, I believe, is a threat to any and everybody's business everywhere in the world. The last part, which is where I want to spend most of my time, I'd like to talk about, well, if you're an incumbent company and technology is no longer an enabler, it's actually a threat, what can you do about it? And then Ron will speak a little bit about, from the perspective of Sysco, which is a traditional company that is the industry leader, a $55 billion company in the food services industry, how we are going through our own transformation with technology at its core. So let's take a look at the three different kinds of innovation. The first is iteration, which is doing the same thing better, and I think everybody needs to do this just to survive. The second is innovation, where you're doing something brand new, right? And some companies do this well, but the final piece is disruption, and the definition that I'm using for disruption here for the purposes of this presentation is new innovation that makes the old thing obsolete, right? Another way to look at this is, if you think of technology on one end of the spectrum and market on the other end of the spectrum, if you have an existing technology making an existing market better, most likely that's iteration. If you have a new technology making an existing market better, that's probably innovation. Again, if you have existing technology improving or creating a new market, most likely that's innovation also. But the most powerful kind of innovation is when you have a new technology creating a new market. That's disruption almost always. Some of the technologies these technologies are called foundational technologies. Examples that I think everybody here will clearly understand is the PC from the 80s, right? Changed the way computing was done across the world. The internet from the 90s. The smartphone from, less than a decade ago, right? Social networking from less than a decade ago. And the other thing that you can think about is that how quickly these foundational technologies themselves are evolving. Now, all four examples that I use all happened in the last 30 decades. Some foundational technologies that will drive the next stage of innovation are things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but also things like virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain, cryptocurrencies. I don't know if are there any Bitcoin investors here? So, and I bet there are a lot of people still following today. Yesterday was the first day the Chicago board of the CBO started trading futures for Bitcoin. And what they did was they knew there was going to be a bunch of people, trading early, so they turned on their servers at 1 a.m. Chicago time and only opened it up to the Tokyo market. Right? Within half an hour, they crashed not just the Bitcoin part of the business, but the entire CBOE, which has never happened in their history. Right? So these are foundational technologies that are just going to change everything. However, let's take the example of artificial intelligence or machine learning. I'll just say AI from now on. Who's the best AI company in the world? Who is the preeminent expert? If you as a company, if your company would like to utilize AI as a way to improve your business, who do you go to? Kamudu says Google, but I don't think Google's going to share that information with you. IBM maybe, because they're trying to sell Watson to everybody with some level of success, right? The thesis that I want to make here is that more and more technology companies are deciding that instead of taking my expertise and building a technology product or creating a technology service or even a consulting practice and providing it to other industries, how about if I use my expertise to build my own products and own that industry? And we're starting to see this, and this is going to be the next stage in the transformation coming from Silicon Valley. The examples that I'm using here, some are obvious, some not so much. The obvious ones everybody knows, right? Robots, you've heard about them. Drones, you've heard about them. Autonomous cars, everybody's building an autonomous car these days, right? But then what about the stuff that you haven't heard about? Nanobots or intelligent apps, blockchain, right? How to use those technologies. Those are the ones that are gonna come and hit you without you even realizing it, and then it's too late, right? If you don't believe me, this is the statement Shanil made earlier. This is Mark Andreessen, who in Silicon Valley is considered a demigod. He's the founding partner of Andreessen Horowitz, one of the largest venture firms, but his real claim to fame is as founder of Netscape, which is probably how everybody in this room that is older than 40 first got on the internet, because that was the first browser that was user-friendly. He coined this term, software is eating the world, because he's made the decision, this was his version of the thesis, software, let's call it more broadly technology, that technology companies are no longer serving, the best technology companies are no longer serving the industries, they're actually eating the industries, right? If you don't believe me, take a look at this chart. This, by the way, is just in the last 15, 16 years. These are the biggest companies by market cap in the US, so which would arguably make them possibly the biggest companies in the world too. In 2001, there was only one technology company, that was Microsoft. In 2006, still only one, Microsoft. In 2011, Apple got up there. Today, the five largest companies in the world or in the US by market cap are all technology companies. The fifth one, Facebook, is what, 12 years old? 13, right? So this in itself is proof that software, or broadly speaking technology, is eating the world. However, in my own opinion, I think while that is today, the future is different. So in looking at this slide, focus less on the actual companies and focus a little bit more on the business model, right? So where Silicon Valley really started, going all the way back to the late 60s, early 70s with Fairchild Semiconductor and companies like HP, Cisco, Intel, IBM, these were all companies that became big technology companies that provided services to others, right? If you wanted the best router, you went to Cisco. If you wanted consulting services, you went to HP or IBM. But then the five companies that are the biggest companies today, are all companies that have instead used technology as a way to create a market, create an industry, and own it, right? Apple's really a technology company, but they're a consumer product company, right? Amazon is a retailer, right? But where we see this evolving as we go into the future is companies like Uber and Airbnb and Tesla and Netflix, right? I'm not necessarily saying that Uber is going to be the next big company or Airbnb is going to be the next big company, maybe, right? But Uber is not, they're a technology company at its core. They function like a technology company, but they're not in the technology business. They're a taxi company. They're a transportation company. Airbnb is a hospitality company, right? So has anybody here heard of Nerd Defense? Okay, stay tuned because I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those guys are up to in a second. Right? So if you're in this environment where the whole technology world is out to get you, and you're this legacy company that's trying to protect your market position or maybe even the market leadership position, what do you do about it? Well, if you can't beat them, join them. Right? And that's what I'm going to talk about in a second. When I made this slide, actually, when I showed this slide to Shanil yesterday, he said, hey, you're going to have to explain who that guy is. So that's Kevin Durant. He's one of the best players in the NBA, and the reason I put him up there is because for years he played for the Oklahoma Thunders, but was not able to win a championship. So then he decided, hey, I'm going to join the Silicon Valley team, the Golden State Warriors, and he got his championship. By the way, be proud that we have a Sri Lankan that's a part owner of that team. So, anyway, so this is the place where I'd like to spend a little bit more time. I think the way a traditional company can actually mitigate the threat of disruption is to actually start functioning more like a technology company. And I think there's a lot, this is not easy to do. There's a lot that you have to do. This requires organizational change, cultural change, and those are all really hard to do, especially as the company is bigger and older. But I've broken it into 4 primary areas: leadership, organization, talent, and brand, and a very different way to look at the brand. And let's now, I'll spend a little bit of time on each one of those sections. On the leadership front, lead like a founder. What does leading like a founder mean? Think a little bit about forget about startups, because it can be argued that a founder in a startup has it easy because you have nothing to lose, which is absolutely true. That's a huge advantage that a startup has. But think about founders who are running Amazon, the founders who are running Google, the founders who are running Netflix. How do they run their companies, right? Think like a founder. The first thing that you have to, if you're a leader in an organization and you want to go through this tech transformation, is run it like you own it, right? Which means make big, bold decisions, which means almost have a dictatorial style of leadership, right? Because if you don't make those bold decisions, then you can't expect that somebody else is going to do it for you, right? Which gets to the second point of making those bold decisions, and I'll use the example of Netflix. The CEO's name fails me right now. But I think I want to say it was maybe 10, 11, 12 years ago, somewhere around then. So Netflix became what they became originally by disrupting and essentially taking Blockbuster out of business. They used to be the DVD distribution channel of choice by saying, hey, there's a better business model, I'm going to do DVD distribution through mail order, right? But, and by this time they were already a public company, and they were a highly profitable company with great growth numbers. Reed Hastings, who is the CEO's name, he realized that the next wave of media is going to be through streaming media services. The world was not ready for it. The bandwidth was not there for it. The content was not there for it. But he realized that if he doesn't disrupt himself, his own DVD business, with the streaming media business, somebody else is going to do it to him. So he made the bold decision to do it. And he announced it on one of his quarterly calls with Wall Street. And he basically said, do not expect us to be profitable over the next 6 to 8 quarters, right? Because we're going to heavily invest in this new technology called streaming media at the expense of our current business, the DVD rental business, right? The stock went from $300-something to $60 overnight. It tanked. Right? Today, they're the largest media company, or one of the largest media companies in the world. Own it, run it like you own it. Right? Team, this is also important, especially if you are now a new leader in the organization that you're leading. Again, all the underlying theme to all of this is running it like a tech company, is don't be saddled with somebody else's dream team. Right? And sometimes, these are not easy decisions to make, but figure out how do you build a team that is immediately under you and then propagating down to the to other levels that complement what you bring to the table. And then the final piece, this is a given, but it's also very important, is be truly passionate about what you're doing and try to infect others in your organization with the same amount of passion. If you go spend some time inside of a Silicon Valley tech company, sometimes, especially the smaller companies that have, maybe they're funded, maybe they have like 50 plus people, but they're definitely not profitable, they're getting some market traction. But you go talk to anybody inside of that organization, it's almost religious, right? They believe in what they're doing like a religion, right? And that most likely is coming from the leader who's infecting the organization with the passion that he or she is bringing to the table, right? Figure out how to do that. The next piece is around organization. And of course, a lot of these things overlap quite a bit. Building an extreme team. This goes back to earlier, don't get saddled with somebody else's dream team, some similarities. But The important thing here is to optimize for the organization versus optimizing for the individual. Especially the companies that are larger, that are older, you will have individuals who have done a great job, come up the ladder, and are in certain positions of authority, certain positions of of executive leadership, right? And that's fine as long as that individual is working as a team with the rest of the organization, right? Going back to Kevin Durant is a phenomenal player, but the reason Golden State Warriors has consistently come to the top and now won 3 times is because of the team as opposed to an individual. So that this is really important. The next piece is once you figure that out, right, delegate and hold people liable. Another thing that I see a lot in big companies that even the smallest decision goes to an entire committee to get done, right? Or everything has to get escalated to the CEO, even the smallest decisions. Figure out how to build an organization where those decisions can happen, within the smaller teams and hold them accountable to it, right? I think the best CEO in the world is the guy that can sit behind the desk and pretend to work. Because that means you've created of course, if the business is still successful, that means that you've created an organization that is self-sufficient, right? Be agile. I assume that a lot of people here from tech, so you've heard this word before, but almost always the agile is applied to development. It's applied to the tech part of the business, but try to apply the agile capability to your entire organization. And then finally, tech itself. Now here's a thought. I would bet that anybody here that is from a non-tech organization, right, comes from a company that has a tech division. Well, what about the idea of just getting rid of the tech division in its entirety? Don't have an IT department, but embed those people inside of all those other organizations. Marketing should have its tech arm. Sales should have its tech arm. Or if you're a company that has different lines of products, each product line should have its own tech arm. Because by doing that, you're actually infusing tech through the entire organization instead of it being this separate group that is supporting the entire organization, and that makes a big difference, right? So these are big things that you can do from an organization standpoint to function more like a tech company. Creating a more entrepreneurial culture, right? Again, going back to extreme talent, the obvious is always try to hire the best, right? But a second part to that is favor the tech savvy, right? Even if you're hiring somebody into a non-tech position, try to hire individuals who are tech savvy because that infuses technology through the entire organization automatically. Create a culture that embraces failure, right? This is also something that you've all heard about and people say it over and over time, but do we really do it, right? Try to really do it, because if you create a culture where failure is encouraged, then you allow people to be more creative, to think outside the box and do things, move fast, break things, right? Give the teams the independence, right, and the self-sufficient. Again, goes back to the statement I made earlier. If you are running a successful company but don't really have to do a lot of work, you've done a good job, right? And then of course the little things, right? Get rid of the corner offices and the fancy office suites. Give great benefits to your employees. Build a game room. Give free food. These are all things that happen in Silicon Valley. Today, if you're starting a company in Silicon Valley, you have to do these things just as a default, otherwise nobody's going to work for you. Try to do those things because it creates an employee force that is a lot more happy to be there, a lot more creative, and a lot more motivated to do what they're doing. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about this new brand, UX, CX, BX. UX stands for user experience, CX stands for customer experience, and BX stands for brand experience. UX, in short, is the experience that your customer is having with your product or service. Right? That's easy to understand. CX is the experience during the whole journey. So what does the customer, what's the experience for the customer from finding out about your company or your products or your service, showing up in the location and talking to a salesperson if that's part of the business, going to actually purchasing the product, unboxing it if it is a physical product, customer service, or any after sales activity that needs to do. That entire experience across is the customer experience. And then finally, the brand experience, this is a little bit looser, is how the entire experience makes the customer feel and how the customer can associate themselves and their own core values with what that company is providing them. The combination of all three of these, UX, CX, and BX, is essentially the new brand. It's not about logos, it's not about marketing slogans, it's not about advertising, it's about this experience in its whole, and that is the new brand, right? And if you do this really well, you're gonna turn your customers into fans. And why is that important? Because customers are fickle. If they don't like what you're doing, they're gonna go away. Fans are not fickle. Fans will stand by you, and they're a lot more accommodating of a few mistakes if you make it here and there. Right? So I'm a huge Sri Lanka cricket fan, which I'm sure everybody here is, or most of you. You realize we haven't won the World Cup since 1996, right? But that doesn't mean we're going to change, right? So if you do this really well, you're going to turn your customers into fans. Now, I said a little while ago, let's see if this is even going to work, that I'm going to show you a little bit more about this company, Nerd Defense. It's a quick video, but it's very powerful stuff that they're doing.
But we have something much bigger. Your kids probably have one of these, right? Not quite. Hell of a pilot? No. That skill is all AI. It's flying itself. Its processor can react 100 times faster than a human. The stochastic motion is an anti-sniper feature. Just like any mobile device these days, it has cameras and sensors, and just like your phones and social media apps, it does facial recognition. Inside here is 3 grams of shaped explosive. This is how it works. Did you see that? That little bang is enough to penetrate the skull and destroy the contents. They used to say guns don't kill people, people do. Well, people don't. They get emotional, disobey orders, aim high. Let's watch the weapons make the decisions. Now, trust me, these were all bad guys. Now that is an airstrike of surgical precision. It's one of a range of products. Trained as a team, they can penetrate buildings, cars, trains, evade people, bullets, pretty much any countermeasure. They cannot be stopped. Now, I said this was big. Why? Because we are thinking big. Watch. A $25 million order now buys this. Enough to kill half a city. The bad half. Nuclear is obsolete. Take out your entire enemy, virtually risk-free. Just characterize him, release the swarm, and rest easy.
Scary, isn't it? I hope everybody was already done eating. I should have warned you before I played the video. This is what you can build if you know, in this case, it's a defense industry, it's a weapons manufacturer. What you do if you start thinking like a tech company. All the technology there is foundational, right? A big part of it is artificial intelligence, right? Now, in all fairness, this company doesn't exist. It's a fake, so rest easy. But I just wanted to use it partly for the entertainment value, so that I can warm up the stage for Ron, but partly just to make the point. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ron. Thank you, guys.
So as I saw that video last night, I was like, man, I've had the opportunity to visit with a lot of people, and I've never had an intro like that. So I was a little sick to my stomach. Hopefully you guys are okay post-lunch on that, because that's a scary thing. Is that okay? Can you hear me breathing too? Hopefully not. No. So my name's Ron May. I'm the Vice President of E-commerce for Sysco Foods, and thank you for having me out today. I'm going to try to shift it just a little bit on a couple of positions. Number one, Monty did a great job of setting up what companies need to be doing. And I felt like that his presentation came straight out of some meeting notes that he observed while at corporate. The second thing is I'm going to start off with some videos that are a little bit more fun than Monty, so hopefully we can get the tone of the room changed a little bit. So as I was thinking about how I wanted to kick today off, and seeing how it's all about user experience and engaging customers, and what I do for Sysco Foods is go and drive e-commerce, right? And one of the things that we get caught up all the time is, how many clicks do we have on our website? How many people are using the mobile application? Did that customer spend an extra $3 on their order, or did they spend an extra 10? It's all about the numbers. I wanted to shift it a little bit. So I left Houston last Tuesday. I've traveled 10,500 miles. I've stayed in 6 hotels, and I think I've spent almost 20 plus hours on an airplane. Right, so one of the things that I do is I observe, and I like to understand the whole customer experience. Right, so we're going to walk you through a couple of things that I had the opportunity to witness this week and talk about it from a customer experience perspective, because some of these companies are truly shifting from the idea of worrying about each dollar that a customer spends to what is the experience that customer is having, so that they will come back and be stronger customers. So that's a picture from an Airbus A380. Has anybody ever had the opportunity to ride one? Right, up top, right? So in the Airbus, if you're lucky enough to ride up top, they have a bar, right, inside the airplane. And so I had a strategy, and the strategy was, I know that I'm going to be flying overnight, so whenever I get on the plane, when we take off, I'm going to go to the bar, I'm going to hang out and spend some time there, and whenever I'm done, then I'm going to go sleep. But one of the problems with this entire trip was that my son was playing in a playoff football game this week, and so it was kind of a sore spot that I left. Well, so as I was standing in the back hanging out at the bar, and of course I was on Wi-Fi, right, my phone pops up, and it's my wife FaceTiming me, right? I really had no idea that she would be able to find me on an airplane. Normally she can seek me out anywhere, but on the airplane she did. Right, so I get the call from her, and I look, and then the next thing I know is, and it's kind of grainy, it's tough to see, it's my son's football game, right? So I know it's a different football than what you guys play here, but in the US, that's the way we do it, and it's what it is. So I got to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes watching my son's football game. And the best part of it was, between the technology that Emirates was giving me, the experience I was having them on the plane, it allowed me to reconnect with people that are important to me. But the most important part of it is, if you drink at your kid's teenage football game, you get in trouble. Nobody could see me doing it, right? So I was okay from that perspective, right? So I thought it was really impressive that Emirates was taking that from a experience perspective. Now, when I landed here in Colombo, they took me straight out to the beach in Negumbo, right? And I spent the next couple of hours sleeping on the beach, reading, just trying to get on the right time zone. And so the next morning I got up, and I'm a part of a group back in Texas, and although it may not look like it, we run a lot. We're a part of a team that we run every year. We run a race in 2 days. It's a 200-mile relay run, which someone will need to do the conversion for me on kilometers. But it's a 200-mile relay run, and there's 10 of us that run it. And so the interesting thing about this team, has anybody ever used the Under Armour running application or watch Fitbit to track your running? Right? So what's great about this application is our entire team is signed up on the app. right? And since the entire team signed up on the app, we have the ability to monitor each other to ensure that everybody's training. And those that aren't training, then they get a little hit. So while I was out on my run, of course it was tracking my run. What I had the opportunity to do while I was on the run was video this and post it. So I'm running down the road into Gumbo. I don't know if you can see it in the back, right? And this is the part that comes up that's just fascinating. This runs a little bit slower than my PC. Sorry about the delay. So here it comes. All right, so I'm running down the road, and I was going by the fish market. Well, it cut off the video. So, but what happened was that moped jumped out in front of me, right? Literally right here between my legs as I'm running. And unfortunately, like every other car on the road, I didn't have a horn to honk at and any of that. So anyway, so we were running along, and I post this to my run. So there's a couple of things. So it's in the middle of the night. When my friends wake up in the morning, they log into the application. They can see that I'm dedicated. They've gone and run. Then they can see the video of me actually on the road with the moped, and then an entire text chat starts. Right? Hey, that looks. Of course, my wife chimes in and says that looks awfully dangerous. I don't know why you'd be doing that. Then one of my buddies was like, well, I thought you could outrun the moped. Then my son chimes in and says, I thought you should have just jumped on the seat and ridden it. But if you think about it, right, what we really want to get to is these three organizations, they are looking for ways to use technology to create experiences, right? And let's talk about Emirates for a second. Not in a million years would I have dreamed that on my flight over during this talk, I would be talking about Emirates. So they win. Emirates created a service experience for me that was fantastic enough that I wanted to share it with you. And I promise you, any of you that ever have the opportunity to fly Emirates and experience that, you'll be telling your friends doing the same thing. They're not paying me to be a spokesman, but they're wanting me to become a fan. And then Under Armour, right? Under Armour makes tennis shoes and t-shirts and running shorts. What in the world are they doing with a technology that allows for me to connect with my friends all over the world? Well, the thing is that they've awakened, right? And they understand that if they want me to be a part of their company, they need to have technology that allows me to engage in that. So that's one of the things Monty was talking about specifically. If you're an organization that sells products or sells things that aren't necessarily technology, what are you going to do to become a technology company so that someone stands up in front of a group of 60 to 80 people and talks about what a fantastic organization you are? And then there's Apple, right? The company, the fan of all fans. And I think it's funny, we laugh. How many times have you ever had an issue with your iPhone, right? How many times have you ever, the upgrade didn't work, whatever. Well, guess what? You went back and you bought the X, you stood in line because it's a great experience. And so I think that concept of, hey, things aren't working really as well, but I'm a fan, so I'm gonna wait it out, right? So moving on, let's get into talk about Sysco just a little bit. Right? So first off, Sysco was founded in 1969 by Bob Bauer. He was always an innovative thinker, right? Really into what am I going to do to drive customer and employee experiences. Today, we have 400,000 customers in over 90 countries. That means we have 10,000 trucks a day on the road. Just stop and think about that for a second. We have 10,000 trucks hauling food all over North America, delivering on it every single day. So it's a very large organization to manage from a day-to-day perspective. This year will be about $50 billion in revenue. As Chanel said, more and more of that's coming online, and we're working on how to drive that even further. And then we also were, as of 1970, when we went public, so we are a publicly traded company. So if you decide to invest in Sysco, you need to do it based on current performance and nothing that I say in this room. All right, so let's take a look at the ride down Sysco, right? Back in 1969, when Bob was like, hey, I want to start up this new food distribution company. And when he did, he went and got 9 other companies, brought them together and said, our mission is to change the way we engage with our customers. Think about that, back in 1969, everybody's always still thinking about customers. And so I want to partner with these 9 other groups. I want to bring them into one so that we can have a larger reach. We can have a bigger buying power. We can go and drive that business. Then in 1979, 1980, as we really became an innovative company, we came up with this concept of a 3-temperature truck, right? Now it doesn't seem like rocket science today, but if you think about it, we had 9 warehouses, we had trucks delivering from all of them, And every time if you wanted something frozen, if you wanted something dry, you wanted something cooler, I had to send you 3 different trucks. So Sysco came up with the idea of putting all of that in one truck. Moving forward, we came up with central warehouses, we came up with warehousing technology way before Amazon ever started building robots to go pick things automatically. Right back then, we actually had tools that would look at the data and figure out what is the fastest moving item, and let's push this close to the truck. Once again, we had people going and picking it up. It wasn't automated. However, we were going down that path. Then we get into local sustainability and traceability from farm to fork, right? Technology that will let me know what field a specific vegetable was picked from, who handled that piece of vegetable as it went through the market, what was the temperature of that vegetable, all the way through to the point that it's sitting on your plate being eaten today. Our goal is to understand that, one, so that our companies can go and market that information, but two, we do it around food safety. But the thing that I want to talk about now is, see over here, we've got this component, it's called Customer Consultation Business Review, and that's about 2009. And if you think about it, that was the first time we started to get information from our customers about what they want from us. Because if you notice, all of the technology to the left of that line, it's innovative, it's driven, but it's all technology that our employees use to make the customer experience better, right? So we had to flip it, and we had to figure out what do we do so that we take all of this great technology we have and turn it so that our customers can use it just as easily as our employees do. And when you get to that, it's really a bigger process than you think. Let's see here. Well, I'm gonna stay on this side. It's really a bigger process than you think. And because we're such a large organization, right? I remember we go back 50 billion in revenue, 55,000 employees, 10,000 trucks on the road every single day. And you start thinking about, hey, I want to be disruptive. Monty was like, hey, don't fear to fail. Well, even the smallest failure at the scale with which we do things can be catastrophic, right? So there's really a shift, right? So there's that pressure of executing the day on a day-to-day business. Really, and then the other thing is the defense mechanism, right? So people are after of us all the time. And there becomes a fear of, if we do something wrong, our competitors are gonna come and take advantage of it. Right, so that day-to-day business, our size and scale, makes it very tough to go and do new things. And then there's this other component, if you think about it. So back in the 1990s, right? So everybody here, I'm sure understands and remembers, in the 90s in the US, large industries started outsourcing their IT people in droves, right? So everybody was trying to cut expenses. Everybody was trying to do a better job at running their IT. So what do? We shift all of that labor over to India. And because of that, in order for it to be cost savings, I reduce my headcount, right? So I no longer have engineers working inside of my organization. I'd shift from engineers to hiring managers to go and manage the people in India, because I still have the same work going on, I'm just not doing it. So I shift those resources to people who know how to manage folks, and you know what I do is I keep the handful of people that were the best engineers. Then if you fast forward to the early 2000s, those best engineers that are still sitting in my office are sick and tired of all the good work getting put over to India, right? I'm an engineer, I want to go build great technology tools, and since you're not letting me, guess what I do? I go to the Facebooks, right? I go to the Apples, I go to the Googles, because I am a smart engineer, and therefore I don't want to be around. So the engineers leave, then I have to hire someone to replace them. Well, guess what? Those 5 engineers that knew everything about my system and were managing that team in India, well, when they leave and I replace them, the people I hire no longer know everything about my system. So all of a sudden, these organizations get into a really serious situation of, am I a group that has the ability to build technology, or I'm a group that has the ability to manage technology? So then 2010 hits, and the whole digital business game really begins to solidify. Salesforce.com, right? And as Chanel said, I was at Salesforce before. At that point, we had 70,000 customers, right? Founded in 1999 by Mark Benioff. At that point, we had 70,000 customers. Amazon, $34 billion in revenue. The iPad was released. And then you look at Facebook with 400 million users. So in 2009, 2010, it became solid that this digital economy was going to stick. Right? Either I'm using cloud-based CRM tools, or I'm having to communicate with my customers via Facebook, I needed to figure out how to do this. So what happens? Well, all the executives say, go get a digital strategy, Mr. IT, go and do it. So what happens then? He's like, I don't have any engineers, or the engineers I have are managing the people in India. Right? So what is it that you do in that scenario to begin to rebuild that, right, and go and drive that, right? So then as you move forward, you've got to understand how to go build those pieces of technology. And I think Cisco's done a really good job of that. Right? So we're going to talk a little bit about the leadership perspective. Right? Our leadership team, having the foresight and the vision to invest in what was LeapSet back in the day 6 years ago, right? Drive that into an ownership position. And I'm here today in Sri Lanka working with them to go build our new IT stack, to go build our new e-commerce layers. But as we do that, we have to look, we can't slow down. So let's take a quick look and see how we're doing so far. So I really try to stay away from managing the business by the numbers. We talked about the dangers you can run into earlier in the day. So whenever I'm beginning to think how successful we're being from an e-commerce perspective, these are the types of insights that I like to collect. And you can see here, this is Renee. Renee is the owner of a burger place in Texas, a hamburger place in Texas. Renee hadn't taken a vacation in 20 years, primarily because he did not feel comfortable leaving his business, because he had to be there every single day to manage it. And it may be tough to read in the back, but there's a picture of Renee right on the canal, and it says, hey, 41 item order just placed while having dinner at Canalside Restaurant in Venice, Italy, thanks to Cisco Mobile. See the correlation? Just as I was talking about Emirates, Renee, the next restaurant managers meeting he goes to, guess what he's going to be talking about? He's going to be telling his friends how Cisco has changed his life. And it's not so important as the cost of cheese, $1 less here or $1 more there. It's about what the organization's doing for me. Then the next one's my absolute favorite. I know you won't be able to read this in the back, so I'll walk you through it. So our very first customer on our mobile inventory app was out of Alta, Utah. It's a ski area in the States. And after he was up and running on the tool for a little while, he sent me this text. And the text says, Powder Mountain just got 24 inches of fresh snow, not going to the restaurant thanks to the mobile app. Right? So now you've got a guy who's been locked to his kitchen because it's ski season, working every single day, but because of the Cisco mobile application, he had the ability to go and spend the afternoon skiing. That's what we're trying to do when I say we're trying to create experiences, and we're using technology to go create those experiences. Right? So today we're working in the ordering phase, right? So I just showed you the mobile app. We've got a desktop application. The revenue's going through the roof from a perspective of customers using it. Customer satisfaction is fantastic. So we're very pleased with the progress that we've made. But the reality, there's a lot more that needs to be done, right? So we're beginning the entire journey process. And those journeys are everything from how do you become a customer at Cisco? And once you become a customer, how do we get you to buy more? All the way to whenever I get a truck, right? Every single day when a restaurant gets a truck sent to their location, they get a pallet full of 50 boxes of food, right? How can we use technology to automate getting that data into their accounting system? How can we use that information to automate and understand, hey, is there something wrong with one of these cases? And have that working through the system versus manual. So if we go back to it, leadership, as I said, we're very fortunate we have leaders that are strong and have the insight and gave us the investment to come work with Cake, which was fantastic. Organizational, the agile side of it, that's a tricky one, right? 55,000 employees, and being agile across the industry is very tough, across the organization is very tough. But we have 650 IT staff folks that are currently going through the agile transformation. They're committed and dedicated to this process. And the great thing is once they complete that, they then are going to step out and begin to do agile transformation inside the business. They're going to do agile transformation inside of support. We're going to do agile transformation through the entire organization. And as Monty said, embedding technology type people into the business. Talent, right? Hiring talent in the States is tough. Everybody that's an engineer wants to go to work for a startup because I'm going to have a cash out, I'm going to go public. They want to work for the latest and greatest and cool companies. Right? Working with the folks here in Sri Lanka has been fantastic. Right? We were able to go in what may have taken years to build from an expertise pool. We came here for a great skill set to work with the Cake team so that we could immediately begin to develop products for Cisco. And then brand. I think the brand part of the conversation is very, very clear. Right? As we look at it, very impressed with the brands that I've experienced over the last few weeks as I travel, looking at the same lens across Sysco, having the brand, having our customers talking about how great our technology is, how great we are as an organization. That's what we're trying to do from a brand perspective. And then if you look at Sri Lanka, where do I think that you guys fit in this, and how can you really go build things, right? So we were talking about it just yesterday, or earlier in the session as well. Outsourcing went to India, right? Teams of thousands upon thousands upon thousands, very large organizations doing outsourcing for very discrete processes. And as you know, when those organizations are that large, it's hard for them to change their model. So then we start looking at what we got from Sri Lanka and what you guys can continue to build, right? So have you heard the term body shop? Everybody heard of a body shop? Body shop means I'm just pushing work through someplace and it's very, very cost effective, right? I think you need to change that concept to the mind shop, right? A mind shop. And that's something where, look, we can consult with organizations to build products if you have the vision that you want to embrace this customer experience. So that's what I've got for today. Very much appreciate your time. Would be happy to have some questions.